Hey everyone, welcome back to Rather Be Visin. My name is Sam, and today we're going to be taking a look at a bit of a tricky question that got thrown my way the other week. That's actually got a really interesting and good application for your day-to-day. So the question that was posed to me was, I've got a report here and I'm having a look at quarterly sales, and what I do is I do a calculation to work out how many days there are in a quarter to work out my daily sales, my average daily sales. And because they didn't know how to approach this particular question, what they were doing was simply dividing the quarterly values by 91.25. So the average number of days we have in a quarter is about 91.25, which is fine if you want some sort of ballpark figures, but if you want it to be a little bit more accurate, there's a much better way of doing it. And then off the back of that, we were thinking about how we could improve this report, and also thought, wouldn't it be good if we could change that date granularity? So if we could switch it from looking at quarters to maybe looking at weeks, maybe looking at months, that sort of thing. So I came away with a solution, and that's what I'm going to be running you through today. So if you've got a report that you want to switch to be able to move between different date granularities, then this is the video that you want to watch. So without further ado, let's hop into Tableau and talk through what we need to do to get this set up. Okay, so here we are in Tableau. I'm just connected to the EU Superstore, so I'll just be using this dummy data set in order to show you what we're going to do here. The first thing we're going to do is set up a parameter so we're able to switch between those date granularities. So I'm going to come to my drop-down menu here and I'm going to select Create Parameter. So we get our usual Create Parameter box pop up. I'm going to name this P-Date Granularity. Now for my data type, I'm going to choose string because I'm going to call this parameter within all of my calculated fields. I'm going to say my allowable values is going to be a list, and in my values I'm going to have day, week, month, quarter and year. Now one thing that you can do with parameters, especially if you're going to be using these on your dashboard, is you can actually change what the value displays as versus what the value is that the parameters call in. So the value column here, that is going to be what is used in calculations when you call this parameter, and the display as, it's what's going to be displayed. So if you have it as a drop-down menu on your dashboard, that is what people are going to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hop into these, and I'm just going to capitalize each of them. I'm going to be very careful with how I press the delete key because sometimes it just gets rid of the whole thing. So here we go, just going to go through and add the capitals to each of these. And I'll bring my day back up to the top. So you can see in our value, we've got the lowercase, and in our display as, we've got the uppercase. And this is very important that your value is the lowercase, otherwise it's not going to work within the calculations. So I'm going to click OK on that. And now we can see our parameter is created down the bottom there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my calculated field to see how many days there are in the granularity that I've picked. So I'm just going to come into my drop down menu and I'm going to do create calculated field. And this I'm going to call days in selected granularity. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a count distinct of each day of the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a count D, and I'm going to then call my date trunc function. And in here, my date part is going to be day of year. And so what this parameter does is it gives every day in the year a different number. The reason I'm going to use this one is because if I do month or if I do day, what it's going to do is for day, it's going to give every day in the month a number, so 1 to 31. And then when I'm doing that over quarters, it's still going to say there's just 31 because it's doing a distinct count. And it's saying actually there is only there's 3 appearances of the number 1, but that 1 is distinct count as 1. So it's going to give me 31 rather than the 92, 91 or 90 days within that quarter. So I'm going to do day of year, and I'm going to do that on my order date. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this in a fixed level of detail calculation. And I'm going to fix this again at a date trunk of my date granularity and then order date. So what this is going to do is it's going to fix it at whatever granularity I've chosen in my parameter, and then it's going to count the number of days of year. So when I'm looking at just days, it's going to say 1. When I'm looking at months, it's going to make sure that it's looking at the whole month. When I'm looking at quarters, it's looking at the whole quarter. So let me just fix this up. And then I need to finish that off with a curly bracket. Still got errors. I've put one too many brackets in there. Cool, so there we go. The calculation is valid. I'm going to click apply on that. And I'm going to change that into a dimension. So if I drop that on rows, bring in my parameter, you can see my date granularity is set to week, and it's now given me the number of days that are in each of my weeks. So if I go to week here, you can see that we've got some weeks that are only posting 3 days of data, some that might only be posting 1, but the majority are posting 6 or 7. So that's what we expect. If we flip this over to quarter, we can see again, because we've got some days that aren't posting within the EU Superstore, it varies in how many days we've got. But that's exactly what we want. We want this to be dynamic, especially if we're having a look at a quarter where we're only part way through. We wouldn't want this to be divided by 91 because that's going to give us the wrong answer. Cool, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our field for the sales by that granularity. So I'm going to come to my drop down menu here, I'm going to create a calculated field, and I'm going to do sales by selected granularity. And all I'm going to do is going to do sum of sales, and then divide that by my days in selected granularity. Now, because I've got this as a dimension, what I need to do is I need to wrap this in a max, because I need to make sure they're both at the same level of aggregation. You can see once I've done that, it says the calculation is valid. I can apply that and I can do show me, and now I can see my sales in here by week, by the number of days within that particular quarter. Okay, now, so in order to make this a bit more usable, there's actually one more calculation we need to make. Now, it's quite in-depth, it's quite complicated, but I'm going to talk you through it each step of the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to our drop-down menu here, and we're going to create a calculated field. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to create a field that we can use as one of our axes to change the date to be whatever granularity we're looking at. So when we have a look at quarters, it's going to switch it around to be quarters. When we're having a look at weeks, it's going to be weeks, and so on. So I'm going to call this my date dynamic. And I'm going to do this using a case function. Now, if you've not used a case function before, basically it's really tends to be with parameters. We're going to say, when my parameter is this, then I want you to do that. And that's basically what we're going to do throughout the whole of this calculation here. So let's start off with year. So I'm going to say when year, then I just want to pull through the string year of order date. So this is going to pull through the year of my order date. Now for month, it's a little bit trickier. So for month, helps if you spell month right. Then I want to do date name, month of order date, and then I'm also going to add, and we can use the plus sign when we're working with strings, and I'm going to put in a space. You can either use speech marks or just the single inverted comma, plus, and then I'm going to add in my string year of order date. Now the reason we're adding in that string year of order date is because with our date name here, all we're doing is pulling through the month of the order date. We're not pulling through the year. So we add that onto the end. So then we're going to say January 2019. Next, for week, we're going to say when, week, then, and we're going to start off with WK. We're then going to add date name, and this time, you've guessed it, we're going to put week rather than month. And then again, we're going to add in that plus year. So then we're going to have the year on the end of our week. Next, for quarter, we're then going to do very similar to week. So we can actually take this one up here. We're just going to put a Q, and then we're going to do date name quarter and string year of order date. And then finally, when we're down to day, we're then just going to do string order date. We then finish that off with an end. And so now, depending on what our date granularity is set to, it's going to do one of these things. So when it's year, it's just going to bring us back the year. When it's week, it's going to bring week, the week number, and then the year. So if I click apply on that and then OK, I can get rid of these. I can bring in my date dynamic, and you can see we're on quarter, and we've got all of our quarters here. Now what you'll see is, because it's doing it on a string function, it doesn't know what order these should be in. So what we can do, if we right click on our date dynamic and we choose sort, we can choose to sort this by a field, and the field name we're going to pick is order date. And if we do maximum, that is then going to put them in the correct order. So you can see we're now going from 2020 all the way up to 2023. So now what we can do, we can bring in the sum of our sales, and we can just make sure we've got our sales by selected granularity at the right format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into default properties, number format, change that to be a currency. I'm going to have it to no decimal places. And if I also change my days and selected granularity back to being a measure, I can bring that in as well. And so now we can see our setup here. So we've got our sales for the quarter. We've then got how many days are in there, and then we've got our sales by day for that particular quarter. So we can see that in quarter one, our daily sales was £910, and for quarter two, it was 1,620. And if we flick this up to have a look at day, we're going to see that these values are all the same because there's only one day within that granularity. But if we go up to year, we can see the values roll up to say there's X number of days within the year. And also we can notice that our date is changing dynamically depending on what we've picked, and it's in the correct order. So that's a really useful one as well. So that's how we answered the question. That's how we managed to make that report a little bit more dynamic. Was that useful to you? Please do let me know in the comments below. There's lots of different applications for this, so I'd love to hear about how you've used it. But as always, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.